That's good.
All right, hello and welcome to Dopey, the podcast about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And I am Dave, and we are joined again from last week's guest, my old friend Sam. So say hello.
Hello. Hi, Dave. Hi, Dopey Nation.
And how you doing, Sam?
I'm doing pretty well, Dave. Thank you.
Now, Sam has always been like, I met Sam. How long has it been, Sam?
We met, I was doing the math, knowing that I was coming on, April 24th of 2003.
2003. So what is that? That's 15 years ago we met. Why don't you tell a little bit about the story of how we met? But I just want to say before any of that, it's like Sam was a television producer. Sam knows about making things. Sam loves making stuff. And
I love Dopey.
Huh?
I love Dopey.
You do? Well, you like making stuff, don't you?
Yeah. And I like how you're making the show. So, yeah, I love this.
Well,
it's my professional critique.
Listen, my point is that when me and Chris started doing Dopey, and Chris wasn't aware of technical aspects of the show or what could make the show do what, I would often call Sam to get Sam's opinion on how to make the show better. Right?
Right, you did. Yes, I was your go-to guy, and I don't think I gave you any real advice.
No, you said it was good. You said that, you would, I mean, like, basically the usual kind of stuff, which is like, we could use more structure. We could, we could use topics.
I would tell you needed more structure, and then you said, no, the best thing about Dopey is that it has no structure. And I'm like, okay.
And then we tried to put structure in, though.
And then I think you did. And then you got your show notes. And then you would read out your notes. And then the show would never follow that format, which is great. Which was why Dopey's working.
Well, that was the only way we could do it. When we tried to add structure, we wouldn't actually add the structure. But when we did have the show note, like, there were a couple episodes in the beginning where... Or not even in the beginning, all the way through, there were a couple episodes where we literally had nothing to talk about, and we would forget the one thing that we wanted to talk about. So, like, a page of notes is always helpful for that. Now, Now, why don't you tell our meeting origin story? This is fun.
Or like we're some bastard addicts, superheroes.
Well, yeah. It's our origin story. You tell this is the story.
Yeah, well, okay, so in 2003, I went to a treatment center in Arizona, and it was nice. It was pretty cushy. It was on an old dude ranch in Tucson.
Before you even say anything, Sam is a total drug addict, alcoholic, terrible crackhead. Continue, please.
Yes, I went there to be treated for my afflictions, plural, which were, at that time, really bad crack addiction and alcohol. Those are my things. It was, sucking on the pipe and
drinking
really cheap, nasty, skanky vodka and this other stuff called Cisco, which would just knock me out and send me into these weird sort of deliriums, sort of like NyQuil almost, but it's you can get it at any liquor store. So I went to Arizona.
What is Cisco exactly?
Cisco's it's like a fruit punch. So it comes in colors. It doesn't even come in flavors.
It's like Gatorade.
It comes in, it's like Gatorade. It comes in orange and purple and red and, sort of the lime green. It looks just like Gatorade, but it fucks you up. And I think it has the same active ingredient, literally as NyQuil. And it would sort of bring me down from the crack high. So I would get so high, and then I would need to come down. And so that would be sort of my go-to, and then it would be just sort of maintenance, drinking copious amounts of vodka throughout the day.
I don't remember how you ever got into crack smoking anyway.
Cocaine had always been my thing. I was a kind of a daily. I wasn't kind of. I was a daily pot smoker from about age 16 until about the year 2000. And but cocaine was always my thing, and so I had done a job over in China, in Shanghai, China, and I was sober when I went over there, and I was also engaged to the first real true love of my life. Things went to shit in the relationship over there. I met a guy, an American guy, who managed a Chinese nightclub, and he gave me some powder, and I thought it was coke, but it was actually heroin. This is a long story to get to where.
This sounds great. It sounds like we haven't had a dopey story like this in years.
This is a long story to get to where I got to be the first class crackhead. And I'd never done heroin before. So we snorted it, and he told me it was a pick-me-up, but it really wasn't. I thought it was, bogus, some sort of bogus white powder. Turns out that it was China white. And I felt better because I'm a garbage head drug addict.
And we're talking about actual China white, because everybody says
China white in China.
Yeah, if you do powdered heroin in New York, and you're in Los Angeles, you call it China white. But it's not really China white. It's from Afghanistan stepped on powder. But you're in China. I mean, who knows if it was really China white, but probably it was.
I don't know what it was. He was nice. It was Christmas Eve, as a matter of fact, and the relationship was totally falling apart, and I was so sad, incredibly depressed, hated the job. I couldn't stand being in China, in Shanghai, with a city of 23 million people.
What was the job?
The job was, I was working on a TV show that was a co-production between the Chinese government, essentially, and a production company in L.A.
Do you want to say what the show was?
It was a really bad show. It was called Flatland. It wasn't picked up for distribution, so we were making this in 16 episodes in the hopes that it was going to get picked up by a U.S. distributor. And interesting side note on that is that when I showed up, I was replacing a guy that didn't know that he was being fired. And so my bosses were too, chicken shit to tell him that he was fired. So I show up in his office and as his replacement. And so anyway, I'm digressing from the story. But the show was really shitty and didn't have a distributor. And when I started working, a week into being there, I found out that the accountant was the mayor of Shanghai's son, and he had embezzled about $4 million of the budget, like right off the top. And the mayor of Shanghai is appointed by Beijing central government because he's the biggest mafioso. He's like the granddaddy black marketeer mafia guy. So they appoint whoever that is, whoever's the biggest mafia guy at the time gets to be mayor of Shanghai. I'm not kidding.
Right.
And so his son stole a whole bunch of money off the top to make payment, whatever.
His tribute to the crime bosses?
Exactly. Yes. So anyway, getting back to Christmas Eve, we're in this guy's weirdo apartment that it has become very hazy to me. I ended up with a few balloons, actually. They were literal balloons, but it was powder, so I had to, dump them out. So for the next 4 days, I blew off work and stayed in my little swanky executive apartment that they set up for me and smoked and snorted heroin. And by the time that I realized that I was getting addicted at the end of it, so I stopped. But it had just been long enough for me to get dope sick.
Right.
It was brutal. So I can share that with all the Dopey Nation and heroin addicts out there that I truly sympathize when anybody goes through it. It was brutal.
You could share it with the Dope Sick Nation too.
I can.
Anyway, continue.
Which we will talk about, I think, probably soon. So anyway, the job was just too much. I was basically having a nervous breakdown on the heels of my tragic relationship falling apart. So I quit, came back to LA, moved back into my apartment. I had a nice woman subletting. I moved back in. And on the way back from the airport, I actually stopped at a liquor store in the cab. And that was really it. That was 2001. And so that,
but you never went back to heroin. So what happened? You got dope sick, you came home, you bought a bottle or whatever, and then what'd you do?
And then I went out on the streets looking for yayo. I went looking for coke, and I found powdered coke. And because I didn't know anybody that sold it, because I had been sober. I had been sober for 6 years before that relapse in China.
Wow.
So I didn't have a source. So I went and found powder, and so I found a regular source, and did so much that I couldn't actually get any more powder up my nose. I would take a.
Hold on for 1 second. You would say that the heroin just didn't agree with you. That's why you didn't. Why didn't you? Why? I mean, you did heroin for the week or whatever. What didn't make you want to get more dope? Like, what was that? That's a good sentence, right? What didn't want to make you get more dope? Why didn't you want to do more dope?
I just wanted to escape is why I did it in the first place. When he did tell me what it was, and I just didn't care because I was so sad. And I just said, fuck it. I just said, like everybody else who relapses, fuck it.
But when you came home, you weren't like, I want more of that. You were like,
no, it doesn't suit my constitution. I'm one of those guys that just loves the uppers. I don't love meth, but cocaine was my, it was my definite drug of choice and had been pretty much always.
Would you say it was your jam?
I wouldn't say that. I don't say that. I don't see anything's my jam.
No.
Continue.
So, but you liked coke, so you went and you bought as much powder as you could get.
I could, and so literally after about a month and a half, 2 months, I couldn't get any more. I was doing so much. I was doing, I don't know, gram to 2 grams a day, and not sleeping. And I would do a line, and then the same amount would just come pouring out my nose, and it was very frustrating. If you're a cokehead and you can't get cocaine up your nose and you can't, infuse it into your.
Yeah, and the powder falls out. Yeah, it's very frustrating.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
So I figured, okay, well, I should probably just start smoking it then, because I can get the same effect, and so I did. So that same dealer would always say, every time, do you want rock or do you want powder? And I would say powder. And so I went to him that one night and I said, I want rock. And he goes, you want rock? And I said, yes, I can't snort any more cocaine up my fucking nose. So, so I did it. He told me where to go get a crack pipe and what to call it. They called them roses at this little liquor store in Silver Lake because they had this little fake rose in them. That's, I guess, how they could sell them.
Right.
And then he told me...
It's a little vase. It's a mini vase.
It's a mini vase, yeah. And then he told me to get the Brillo pad and use that as a screen and then the whole deal. And then I was off to the races. And I'm going to make this story fast, but I love the crack. It was great. It was so much faster. It was so much more intense than blow ever was. That I spent all my savings. I had had a pretty good job and had saved a ton of money and was really hoping to buy a house and just be a regular person. And that all went out the window over the course of 14 months. Smoking crack and just destroying myself, destroying my life, and destroying all of my relationships with my family. And needless to say, the relationship with my fiance in New Zealand, which is where she was, went to shit, and I didn't care. I think I just didn't care because I was so in deep, and that's really sad.
Well, you loved getting high, you loved getting drunk, and you were addicted to both of them, and you gave up on your life, which happened to lots of us. I did the same exact thing and gave up on everything. So what was the thing that brought you to rehab? Like, what was that? I remember I met Sam in South Florida in that horrible treatment center Renaissance, and it was a Sunday night, And when we had a guest on recently named Jake Fogelnest, who also had gone to Renaissance, and he was talking about this guy. His name was McNally, and every Sunday night he would do something called the McNally Rally, which is like we'd all go into a room and he would like beat the shit out of us. He would just bully us. He would pick a couple of people and he would just humiliate them. And the first night that Sam was there, I think he had you tell the story. Didn't he have you tell the story?
No, but he picked me and he singled me out. And I hadn't even been to a treatment center. I didn't even know that he was my primary therapist. But he singled me out. He apparently had handpicked me because I was just a middle of the road producer on some, average TV shows. I wasn't a hotshot. I had a nice career, but I wasn't, anybody really. But he thought I might have been because I came from LA and I had that, resume.
I think he thought you thought you were somebody more than anything. I think that was his deal.
That was always his deal. Yeah, that was his jam.
Yeah, that was his jam. But anyway, do you remember the story that I'm talking about? The story that I keep bringing up to you? Yeah, well, the story was the beginning of the end, really, was when my family had a place, a little cabin near Lake Tahoe. And this was December 6th of 2002. And I had just taken a shit ton. I think I spent most of my last money, I had like $500 in giant rocks of crack up to this cabin. And I was drinking and I didn't know what was happening. I didn't want to die, but I just wanted to just be left alone and do my thing. And so it was about 10:30 at night, and I went to go buy a pack of cigarettes. I jumped in my car, and it was December, and it was snowy and icy up there. And I blacked out and went off the road on this sort of hairpin curve, but I went straight instead of hairpinning left. Went into this apple orchard, this tree orchard, barely missed them on either side, as I saw it, later when I was sober. Flipped up on my side and then skidded across the driveway into a cabin. And didn't have my seatbelt on, and there were 3 impressions from my skull in the windshield where I had smashed it. And I was concussed. I was bleeding profusely from the head. I'd sliced up my leg really badly. And the next thing I know, I had got myself back. It was about a mile to the cabin. And didn't know where I was. All I remember is that it was like Groundhog Day. I remember I'm out of cigarettes. I need to go get some cigarettes. So anyway, I couldn't find my car. And obviously, and I called the police and reported my car stolen. Yes. And so the police show up. They're actually Placer County sheriffs, a couple of them. They take one look at me, and they knew something wasn't adding up. And well, you were all fucked up, right? You were like beaten and bruised. I was all fucked up, and I was all concussed, and it was doubly fucked up, from the concussions and the just. Probably, and nearing the end of my 14-month run, and with very little sleep, way too little sleep for the average humanoid. And so anyway, I remember one of them saying that you have injuries consistent with a vehicular accident. Like, I remember him saying that clearly. And I said, I don't know where my car is. And it's like, I don't have the vehicle. And then so as we were talking, I'm like, oh yeah, I went out to go get some smokes. And then it was all becoming clear to me. Well, you're drunk and beat up. You have like cuts on your legs. You're like all fucked up, on crack. My face was red. It was like, Carrie getting a bucket of pig's blood dumped on her head. My face was completely bloody. Right. And ultimately had to get 3 sets of stitches in my head and on my leg. You were like, excuse me, officer, I can't really find my car, but I'm looking to partake some cigarettes. If you can tell me where to procure them, I'd be very happy. And they're like, yeah, you're supposed to be here to help me find my vehicle, which I reported stolen. So everything was sort of becoming clear to me. I remembered what happened. I ultimately led them to where I had
gone or where I was going. And sure enough, there's my Toyota Land Cruiser on its side, half buried into a cabin. And so, I should have said, with hindsight, having relived this story, I should have said that, I got in the accident, came home and drank, but I didn't. I copped to it because I think I just wanted it to be over. And, got taken to the hospital, stitched up, and then spent the night in jail.
What do you mean in hindsight you wish you had gone home and drank or whatever? What does that mean?
I wish that that had been my story. I wish that I had the wherewithal to tell the police that, I skidded off the road and was so depressed that my car was totaled that I started drinking when I came home. Because they couldn't have proved that I was drunk when I was driving. I could have said I started drinking.
Right. But that didn't even occur to you.
No, and that's a product, that story, that came from all the day rooms in the treatment centers talking. It's like, oh, dude, you blew it. I can't believe you ratted yourself out, which I did. I totally called the cops on myself ultimately. That's what ended up happening.
Right. But that's what had to happen, you know what I mean? We can always go back and look at something and wish we had done it differently, but all we have is what happened, right?
That's right. And I think I was done. I was so spent. I mean, that takes a toll, smoking crack and drinking daily and nightly and just, relentlessly searching, for drugs and for, it's so tiring. So tiring.
Yeah. And to be totally transparent, I know Sam has had millions of relapses since then. The question is, though, did you ever do crack again after that?
I did one time, to be transparent, in Florida. So I'll get there. So let me just back up so I can get to the McNally rally. So I sort of dabbled it, but I was really out of money. I had to move back into my mom's house. And, I was selling off my stuff. I had a bunch of decent stuff. I had musical instruments and stuff that I pawned. And so I wasn't able to live the life of the addict that I had been living. So, so I was just sort of,
What musical instruments did you sell?
I had a really great pearl inlay antique banjo that had been given to me by my godmother.
But could you play it?
I never learned how to play it.
Okay.
No.
I could have seen you as a banjo player, though.
And my mom dated a guy when she was in high school, and she thought he was the coolest. Like in the 40s, she dated this banjo player, and she thought, I think he was one of her favorite boyfriends. And
your mother dated a guy in the 40s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the late 40s when she was a teenager.
All right.
Yeah, she was born in 1933. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so she my godmother was going to get rid of the banjo, but my mom convinced her to give it to me. I was going to take lessons, never did. Beautiful instrument, sold it for like $150, and I'm sure it was worth $1,000. Just like junkie addicts do. I also had a saxophone. A tenor saxophone that I had traded for some crack, so I had that in my possession, so I sold that. And I taught myself how to play the I Dream of Jeannie theme song on it. So that was it, self-taught. And sold a bunch of other stuff, and anyway...
My point is that you can't play any instruments, so it's funny that you go to the instruments that you sold. I think that's funny. Anyway, continue, please. I'm with you.
Yeah. So the end was nigh, and my mom ended up putting a lock on the liquor cabinet, and I would jimmy it open all the time. And anyway, so my family had a pretty informal intervention for me, and I'm like, oh, thank God. So I went completely willingly to this place in Arizona, in Tucson, that I mentioned. Was there for a month. Had fully surrendered. I was like, I'm done. I just can't live this way. I want my life back. I don't think it's been too long since I've been out of the loop in my career world. I think if I get sober, I can go back to just go back and it'll all be good. But no, my primary therapist said it would probably be best if I go away for more treatment, so continuing care. So it was agreed upon in a family week, and my mom was willing to pay for it to go to Florida, to Delray Beach, and
the home of Dope Sick Nation.
The home of Dope Sick Nation, yes. And so I'm like, fuck, all right. And it was clear that boundaries were set in the family week that I couldn't come back home and live with her, and I didn't have any money, so I couldn't have an apartment. So this is really, it was either go to Delray and go to Renaissance or be homeless and sober. And that would have not ended well. So I went and, ended up in Florida. And my first day there was Sunday that you'd mentioned. And it was the McNally rally. Yeah. And that fucker singled me out. He sort of handpicked me to be sort of the turd in the middle of the room. And it just began to berate me, and try to break me down, which was their style. They try to they try to create a bottom, like an artificial bottom by shit that they would do and say to you and make your life so miserable. So that was
the idea is they break you down to build you back up. It's just everybody's experience is that nobody gets built up. Although we saw some people get built up. It just wasn't going to happen for us over there. There are some kids that got built up over there, and I'm sure that if you scour the planet, there are many success stories from Renaissance. We just weren't two of them. You know what I mean?
No, because I just didn't respond to that kind of treatment. I need a loving, supportive, nurturing environment, and I end up with that fucker as my primary therapist, who just loved to, give me endless shit and bring me down and tell me what a piece of shit I was. So,
you want to hear something interesting?
Of course.
You know that music that I played at the beginning of the show?
Yes.
You know who that was?
I don't.
That was Harold from Renaissance.
That was Harold from the infamous Delray recovery band.
And Harold fucking... I've been trying to get him to record a theme track for me, or an anthem for me. So he recorded something like that on acoustic guitar, and he had this whole plan to record an electric version that involved me paying for studio time, which I was happy to do.
You would have done that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have paid an exorbitant amount, but I would have paid a little bit for studio time. That's a great song.
It is a good song.
But in the end, we agreed that if I play the song, I will plug his Instagram page, which is health_collective 666. And I don't know if you heard Harold when he was on Dopey, Sam, but he was pretty good on Dopey. He showed up at my house in Manhattan 3 years ago, and I made him this intense dinner. And we hung out, and we ate dinner, and we jammed, and we smoked cigarettes.
What makes the dinner intense? What did you make for him?
I did it up.
Wellington?
No, I mean I don't make beef Wellington, but I pulled out every stop that I knew. I baked chicken. First I seared chicken, and then I broiled it. I made sweet potatoes with I made a pan of sweet potatoes, onions, cauliflower, whatever, a bunch of vegetables that I seasoned and broiled or baked or whatever the fuck I did. And I sauteed a shitload of Brussels sprouts, and I made some rice, but it was a nice plate of food. It was a lot of stuff.
Sounds intense.
Does it not sound like an intense plate of food?
No, I think intense is funny way of describing a nice home cooked meal.
But
for Harold.
The truth is that I would do that once in a while. I would pick two of those components. But when Harold was there, I did 5 components to show Harold, to try to give Harold love. But so health_collective 666 is Harold's Instagram. Harold's a great artist. He's a photographer. He's a musician. And he's doing these T-shirts right now. And supposedly in the next coming months, he's going to do a Dopey Health Collective collaboration. So check out Harold. I think he has a band called The Escorts right now. He might have another band. Harold is always up to something good.
He should collaborate with Alana, your resident graphic artist, on the T-shirt line.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what they wind up coming up with. But I think that's cool that Harold did that. I love that. Dopey Nation, if you like that thing, let me know. Where are we at? What do you got?
Florida, which is, I think, probably a good segue to talk about the show Dopesick Nation, which is set in Delray Beach, which both you and I are painfully familiar with the recovery scene down there.
Yeah, I was actually talking about Delray Beach this morning. I went to a meeting this morning, and it was a tradition meeting. I don't usually go to meetings on Thursday mornings on Long Island, but I went this morning, and it was about the third tradition, and I don't know what the third tradition is, except I do know. I think what the third tradition is that you're a member of AA once you say you're a member of AA. I think that's the third tradition. So it was a lot of talk about. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say that's what that fucker McNally would do. He would never admit that he was an alcoholic or an addict. But when he would share in meetings down there, he would say that he was a member of the fellowship. That's how he qualified himself. He wouldn't say that he was an alcoholic or an addict, but he would say, I'm a member of the fellowship. And that always irked me because I just always felt like he was masking something and he was just being disingenuous. I don't know.
I like it when they're like, I'm a blessed recovering alcoholic, or I used to hate that kind of stuff. I used to hate any kind of like description in the qualification. But anyway, at the meeting today, it was all about like when AA is welcome to drug addicts or when they're not welcome to drug addicts, that kind of stuff. And I shared about the clubhouse in Delray where half was AA and half was NA. And I went to NA. And I was convinced that everyone in AA in Delray, which rhymes, I guess NA in Delray rhymes though too. I thought anybody in AA in Delray smoked weed, and I was like, I had this resentment, like, well, I would be happy to be in AA and just smoke weed, because they did, didn't they? Didn't people in Delray AA smoke weed? Wasn't that your story?
I don't think everybody did, but
no. Hold on. Definitely, everyone did not. They did not.
Yeah.
I was just retarded, and I had convinced myself of that because I didn't want to stop smoking bud.
Right. Well, that was clear with my experience with you down there, for sure. No, my story with the weed smoking in AA was that I found this really great sponsor. And he was the first sponsor that I actually ever had. And he was really empathetic and just super cool, down to earth, nice guy. Wasn't from Florida, and I always found that the nicest people in Florida were not originally from there. And he had 18 years of sobriety, and then somebody pulled me aside. One of his contemporaries said, you shouldn't have him as your sponsor because he's never stopped smoking weed, and he's been coming to this is his home group. He's been coming here for 18 years and saying that he's sober, and he's not. And I'm like, what? How could that be? That's that's so horrible. And I didn't. There wasn't such a thing as harm reduction or any alternative. It was either big book thumpers or get the fuck out. And so stupidly, I took a hard stance and found another sponsor. Excuse me. And so that was my weed smoking. So this great guy that I had who was really wise and really was working, helping me work a program for the very first time in these early horrible days in Delray. I flicked.
I had a sponsor.
Shouldn't have.
You shouldn't have. You should have started smoking weed with that guy. Maybe you would never have relapsed. Maybe you would just be a pot smoking member of AA in Delray to this day.
Just a blissful, blessed,
pothead.
Non-drinking pothead, right?
But that didn't happen. But do you remember in Delray, my sponsor? I had this guy, this old bald guy was my sponsor. I needed a sponsor and I couldn't find a sponsor. So I asked this old bald guy to be my sponsor, and he had like 25 years and he was from Florida, and he took me to his house, and we had pizza or something, and we started reading out of the NA book, and then and I was just not trusting this guy. And then he brought me to his bedroom and he started playing laser discs of Fleetwood Mac concerts. Do you remember that?
That sounds good. No, I don't, but that sounds cool.
And it was totally probably on the up and up, but for some reason I just thought it was so bizarre and like lascivious, and I was like, I gotta get out of here. And I always felt like, do you remember, and this is going to show our age, but do you remember the Different Strokes episode where the bike store...
I think you just told our age with laser discs.
Well, that was in 2000. I'm saying this guy's age. That was 2003, and he's pumping Fleetwood Mac on Laserdisc. That's not my fault.
Yeah.
But do you remember the fucking Different Strokes episode where the bike store guy tries to molest Arnold?
I don't.
Oh, it was classic. But that's what I felt. I felt like I was like going to be the victim of some sort of molestation, which I wasn't.
Yeah, then you would have been another Del Rey statistic, and the the duplicitous world of recovery that is, and the shenanigans that go on down there.
Well, so get back to your... See, it's fucked up because we made peace with the fucking Dope Sick Nation because that girl was sweet, but it makes me sick that, like, she tweets and then she hashtags Dope Sick Nation.
Yeah. I thought she was sweet too. I thought she was nice. I thought she was genuine. But I think what happened with me in listening to your interview last week was that it brought up the shitty experience that I had down there, and then it made me convinced more than ever that the feud is real and that she's just being played by the Vice executives, and then it's just everybody. I think that because they don't value people in recovery, and they can just fuck. I think they're just. It feels like Vice is just fucking with the recovery world, and just taking it for granted and pissing on it, to make a little show to fill another hour of content.
Well, you hate Dope Sick Nation. You don't think it's a good show. I think
I do not think it's a good show.
I'm
probably going to take a ton of shit from Dopey Nation. So,
good for you, man. Will. Fuck it. I still have not seen Dope Sick Nation. Linda,
and you told me you're not going to see it. You don't want to see it.
I don't want to see it. I don't want to watch it. I have no. I don't like watching these shows. I like making Dopey. I like watching shows where drug addicts do drugs, but I don't really want to see another intervention-y show. I'll watch it one day, and then I will give my opinion about Dope Sick Nation. But I don't feel... I mean, like, we just made nice with Allie. I don't want to, like, be a total hypocrite and, like, be like, your show sucks or anything like that. I don't want to do that. She was very sweet. I think that Vice made the show to check off a box that they have a recovery show, and because I wrote them an email. And I do think...
Because they show all kinds of other crazy shit. And, somebody was even talking about, I can't remember, I think maybe it was Alana or Allie, I can't remember, about their crazy, pot baking shows in which they, kind of glorify drug use. And
well, they don't. It's not kind of. They do glorify drug use. But, to be fair, drug addicts like to see... I mean, Dopey in some ways glorifies drug use. Drug addicts like to see drugs be glorified. It's fun. If you do drugs, it's fun to watch other people do drugs. It just becomes less fun once you've had the shit kicked out of you for long enough.
That's for sure.
I think we should move on to the voicemail. Or, what do you want? You want voicemail or Sizzurp?
Oh.
Your pick.
What's the Sizzurp?
The Sizzurp is the story. It's that when I went to record the Methadone Minute, there was some guy. I'll just play it. Dopey Nation. When I went to record the Methadone Minute, there was this guy who was there to buy Sizzurp, or he was either to buy Sizzurp or Xanax. But he was asking everyone if they had Sizzurp, and I had never drank Sizzurp, so I wanted to see what it was about, and this is what he told me.
Sizzurp is like...
Again, one more time.
It's like doing a whole bunch of methadone and heroin at the same time, but not ODing on it, and feeling the effects of it, but not going blind. You know how sometimes you go into a black hole and you don't remember nothing? You remember everything, but then it makes you feel like you're the best. It's like like how Xanax makes you feel invincible. When you take a Xanax, you go stealing and you think nobody can see you. Meanwhile, you're doing it in their face. That's exactly what it is. It's all that put together. And what I'm saying is like the feeling I get off is like if I was to kill somebody by mistake and it could be a child, I wouldn't even feel guilty about it if I'm on syrup because it gives me that endorphin like. Oh.
How often do you have to take it?
No, I don't abuse it.
If you don't take it, you get sick?
I think so, you will. I don't do it because I know that you catch seizures off of it.
Do you remember what you did on it, or is it like Xanax that you forget everything?
No, I fucking enjoyed the shit out of it. Like, I'm, how you doing?
Will you tell us about mixing it?
Mixing it? No, that I wouldn't suggest.
You make it, right? Though
no, all you do is this, you grab the promethazine and comes with codeine, and you mix it with Sprite, and that's it. And that's what makes it Sizzurp. Yeah. And but don't mix it with meth or other stuff because you will fall into, like they say, a K-hole.
Yeah.
You understand? And you won't remember shit. But if you take it alone, you will enjoy so goddamn much. You'll be the friendliest person on earth. You'll enjoy yourself. You'll think that you're Superman. God forbid you're on top of a building, you might jump. Yeah, that's basically it, man.
Right, perfect. Thank you.
All right.
That might be the dopiest piece I've ever played on Dopey, by the way.
It's really good.
If you kill a child, you wouldn't care on Sizzurp. That could be like a commercial for Sizzurp. If you can even kill a child and you won't care. It's just the worst. It's like the worst thing ever. Have you ever had Sizzurp though?
I haven't. I don't even know what it is, and I actually don't. I still don't have a clear picture from the guy. But what I did like what he said is that you don't want to mix meth with Sizzurp.
He's talking about methadone because it's at the methadone clinic. I think.
Okay.
I think maybe he's talking about meth. I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
I don't know either.
But he was at the clinic, so I assumed he was talking about methadone.
Yeah. Well, he seemed to really know a lot about it and enjoy it. His experiences on it.
Yeah, he really, really liked Sizzurp. Now we got to move on. We got to get you out of here. Oh man, I promised I was going to read the speech, and I also promised we had all this stuff to do, but we got so caught up in your incredible tale of. I guess we could just keep going for a bit. The feud, the feud is never going to be over because fucking, what are you going to do? You know what I mean?
I don't think it needs to be over. I mean, I think that it can just simmer on the back burner because, I said it last week that I think, it was some nefarious action. I don't think it's the producers or certainly not the hosts of Dope Sick Nation, that are the bad guys in the scenario. I think that they caught wind of the phrase Dopey Nation, thought it sounded great.
And they took it all the way to the bank.
Yeah, they did. They did. I will always believe that.
And I want to say this for the record. And maybe this is going to cost me my chance to have a show on Vice. And if you're listening, Vice, I would love to have a show on Vice or Viceland. I would love that.
You know they're listening. You know that they are listening.
If you're listening, besides the fact that I want to have a show on Vice or Viceland, I just want to say for the record, I've never watched a show on Vice or Viceland. And what?
That's not going to help your chances.
I don't care. The truth is,
you should say I watch everything.
I don't watch anything. And what I've seen, I haven't enjoyed. It seems like hipsterism on display, and that's what I have to say about it. It seems like it's all designed to fucking make. I remember I was working at the restaurant I work at, and it was before Vice Channel existed and before Viceland, and he had Vice magazine, okay, on the back counter, and I looked at it and I was like, holy shit, this magazine, it was like a skate magazine. And I was like, it was about all sorts of underground culture. And I was like, and I knew it was way too cool for me, okay, when I looked at it. And then when the TV network came out, I was like, wow, that's cool. But I can't imagine that they could expand as much as they've expanded and stay cool. It smacks of poserism to me at this point, if that means anything.
Yeah, I just don't think they have stayed cool. I think they've diluted the brand. You know, and what I have such a hard time with is the Vice journalist bros, you know, that are such hipsters that it's for me, it's sort of hard to take them seriously because they are taking themselves so seriously. You know, when it was sort of a cool underground thing at its inception.
Well, that might be why it would be good for them to invest in a non-hipster, non-pretentious product like Dopey.
Because you are not hip or pretentious.
I'm neither hip nor pretentious.
Right.
But let's move on. So that's what we have to say about the Vice land, Vice war, fuck Vice, but give us a show, bite the hand that feeds and such.
Well, what I like is somebody on Dopey Nation, the Facebook page, said, the battle is over, but the war rages on.
Yes, that sounds good to me. Now, I just want, again, this is just a quick tease. Coming January or February is going to be a little thing that I am tentatively calling DopeyCon. And DopeyCon is going to be some sort of storytelling live Dopey with music and whoever from the Dopey Nation is willing to come to New York. What I really need to know is how many people are going to come. I have a space big enough for 60, but you guys are way more than 60 people, and I need to know how many are coming. So should we book a theater and do a whole thing? Should we try to get Amy Dresner, Brandon Novak, Bob Forrest, whoever might want to come? I know Artie Lang won't want to come, but maybe those guys will want to come. I think Amy Dresner gave me a tentative yes already, and I wouldn't be surprised if Brandon Novak wanted to come. I wouldn't be surprised if Tim from Philly wanted to come, if Jeremy Turner wanted to come. I know that Tina wants to come. Leah Lemberg will probably come. A lot of Cormac will come. A lot of the Dopey Nation will show up. So the question is how many people will show up.
Yeah, I'm going to show up.
Sam will show up.
I live in California. I'm coming. If there's a DopeyCon, I'm coming.
Yeah, DopeyCon 2019. It could be something special, so let me know if you guys are interested. Now I'm going to bring down the mood a little bit. Tonight, because it's really tomorrow night, but tonight they're doing something called the, what do they call it? The Enlightened Recovery Wellness Symposium. And they invited me to go down and accept an award, which is nice because nobody's ever given me an award for anything. You know that? Nobody's ever given me an award for anything.
Well, that's hard for me to believe.
It's true. Has anyone ever given you an award?
I have won awards for, my professional work.
What kind of awards?
I won an Addy award, a couple of Addies. Those are advertising awards for production company that I started.
That's great.
Yeah.
You're lucky because we made it through your whole Dopey appearance without talking about your chronic relapsing. Instead, we hear about your Addy awards and achievements, which is nice.
But that only happened because of my periods of sobriety. I mean, that never would have happened. Nothing good would have ever happened in my life if I hadn't had some periods of sobriety. I've had six years twice, and a couple years here and there. And good things miraculously happen when I'm sober, but they don't when I'm active.
Right. I think that says it all. Good things can happen when you're sober, and they can't when you're active. I mean, I guess some good things could happen when you're active, but they're not going to last.
That's for sure.
Now, I'm going to read this speech because I'm sure most of the Dopey Nation isn't going to make it to this event, unless they are. What if all the Dopey Nation is at the Enlightened Recovery Wellness Symposium right now? I'm going to feel really stupid that I didn't go. But I'm going to read the speech because this woman, Erin, wanted to recognize me and Chris and Dopey. So, and then Amy Dresner is going to speak there. So I just figured it would be a real show-busy move to have Amy Dresner accept the award on our behalf, and she, being a show-busy recovery woman, decided to do it. And I like Amy Dresner a lot, and I'm very happy that she decided to do this because I think it's cool. I hope we can get audio of it. But if not, I'm going to read I wrote her a speech which I'm going to read, and then Sam helped me cut it down, and that's what she's going to read. But I'm going to read the long one because I really wrote it for the Dopey Nation, so I'm going to read it. All right. I just want to say thanks to... I'm going to not read... I wrote a bunch of stuff to Amy Dresner at the top of it, but I'm not going to read that now. You think I should read that stuff too?
I think read it as... Yeah.
All right.
It's funny.
I wrote... Yeah. I wrote, hey guys, I hope you guys are having an amazing symposium or seminar or whatever it exactly is. I'm sure it's awesome because Amy is there, and wherever Amy goes is awesome, right? Amy, is it fun to read this? I bet you love shit like this. Amy Dresner is the best. By the way, picking up trash in Hollywood isn't a chain gang. I meant to tell you that last time you were on Dopey. It's community service. But I digress. Love you, Amy. I just want to say thanks to Aaron and Enlightened Recovery for recognizing Dopey. When Chris and I started making our stupid little podcast, or Dopey, on the dark comedy of drug addiction for those unenlightened among you who may not know what Dopey is, we honestly didn't think anyone would listen or care, and we certainly didn't think we would be helping anyone. I had met Chris in rehab in Connecticut almost 8 years ago, and we hit it off like lots of people who meet in rehab do. Somehow we maintained a friendship afterwards through our sobriety and our relapses. Chris would pop in to where I work from time to tell me how he was doing or to introduce me to his newest girlfriend. We started doing Dopey because I love to make shit, and Chris believed something I made eventually would be successful, so he wanted in. I knew Chris was an amazing storyteller and a horrible addict, and I also knew that I always wanted my own talk show more than anything. So I figured, why not put these things together and do one of these podcasts I was hearing about? Chris agreed and drove down from Soberland, a.k.a. Great Barrington, Massachusetts, to meet me on the Lower East Side of Manhattan to record our new podcast. We decided the show was only going to be about war stories, so we were going to name the show War Stories. Our logo was going to be soldiers fighting with huge needles instead of bayonets, throwing pills instead of grenades. The show was not going to be a recovery podcast. It was going to be a show about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And that's what we did. Chris had no idea how we would accomplish the Herculean feat of having a podcast. He was like, what do we do? Do we prepare something? How is this going to work? And I was like, I'm going to hit record and we're going to talk, and that's what's going to be. We had no gear, and we talked directly into a MacBook Pro. That was just about 3 years ago this Christmas. We released at least one episode since then every week and loved most of them. We loved it because it was funny and fun, but really we loved it because it was ours. We made it from nothing, and it became something that made us partners. We had always been friends, but now we were closer than friends. We were like brothers, or more like non-romantic parents, because we had birthed our deformed renegade podcast child, Dopey. We loved Dopey, and we loved the Dopey Nation, and we loved each other. It was a true joy for us to make, and we were both so proud when we'd see we had more downloads, or a big-time guest like Dr. Drew or Artie Lang, or even the great and all-powerful Amy Dresner. We loved to hear from the Dopey Nation because they were like us. They were mostly addicts or were affected by addiction. Most importantly, they were our people, and they were affected by our story and our friendship. It was incredibly moving and powerful. It was also a chance to chronicle our drug use and our recovery. It was a super fun way to celebrate our recovery and try to show that a life in recovery could be fun, even when talking about the most shameful shit. If you don't know about our show, then you don't know about Chris. First of all, Chris was tall and handsome and smart and funny. He was as innocent as you could be while still being a crackhead junkie IV coke addict. He had been to 15 treatments and spent almost 2 years in jail, yet somehow he was like a blank slate. He was an anachronism. He knew almost nothing about current events, less about entertainment, little about rock and roll, and probably zero about politics. He knew a tiny bit about hip-hop and horrible ambient music. What he did know about was drugs. He knew everything you could think of when it came to drugs. He knew chemical names, generic names, psychiatric medications, drug interactions, how they worked, how long they would last, how to get them, and how to get off of them. He didn't know the difference between Freddie Mercury and Prince, but knew the half-life of the most obscure research chemical or dissociative substance you've never heard of. I was a drug addict forever, and I had no idea what he was talking about half the time. He also knew everything about addiction. All of the psychobabble that had been spouted at him since his teen years he had somehow retained. And he knew recovery. He knew the AA Big Book backwards and forwards and can cite passages and page numbers at the drop of a hat. He was the best partner I could ever imagine having for a show like Dopey because as well as he knew the material, he was even more fun to talk with and was one of the most entertaining people I have ever met. He also didn't mind when I would go off on him, which I did constantly. Most of the time, Chris took the abuse well, and sometimes he would fight back. We'd laugh and then revisit what we had done. Making Dopey with Chris was one of the best, most fun, and incredibly rewarding experiences of my life. Somehow, that's where the story goes sideways and ultimately becomes utterly tragic. Because even though we are having fun and making a podcast about addiction and recovery, Chris relapsed. He had 4.5 years clean. He was a PsyD candidate in Boston. He managed a sober house. He had a beautiful girlfriend attending Harvard Medical School. And of course, he had Dopey. But somehow, even with all of that good stuff in his life, Chris relapsed. And he overdosed and he died. So in the end, Chris became another tragic casualty of addiction story. He becomes an example for the truest message of recovery. He is now a cautionary tale, but he will always be something else to me. He was my partner. He would always say co-host because I think he was scared people would think we were gay. But he was my partner in Dopey. He was one of my best friends, and my life will never be the same now that he's gone. Chris always said toodles at the end of every episode, which I always hated. He always would try to get me to say it at the end of the episode, and I never would because I always thought it was so annoying to say toodles. I would say stay strong, Dopey Nation, and Chris would say toodles. And now in some cosmic joke designed by Chris, because Chris loved shit like this, I have to say toodles every week. So I want to thank Aaron, Enlightened Recovery, and thanks, of course, to the super cool and talented Amy Dresner. I also want to thank my beautiful partner in my life, Linda, for putting up with my dopey obsession and being tolerant of my need to constantly make things. I also want to thank our fans, because Dopey is absolutely nothing without the Dopey Nation. Thank you guys for listening and being so fucking cool and active and loud and loving and involved and crazy and willing to be yourselves and be so all about Dopey. But most of all, I want to thank Chris. He made Dopey what it was. He always will be a part of the show. The show will always be ours, and I will always love and miss him. So stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris. And that's the speech that Amy didn't do. But Amy did a shorter version. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. That was so great, Dave.
I read it to Linda today at lunch, and I literally cried reading it to her. I didn't cry now though. So sorry, Dopey Nation. It just wasn't going to happen.
You had your cry in for today.
It would take a lot. I mean, and I wrote it on the fucking Long Island Railroad, and I cried like a baby on the Long Island Railroad. It was just so sad.
Well, it's an amazing tribute to your co-host, to your non-romantic
partner,
yeah.
So
I loved it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate everything you do for the show. And Dopey Nation should know that Sam does a ton of work, or at least a ton of talking for Dopey and writing for Dopey. So, and Sam also did the fake law office guy, Eugene Meyerson.
Yeah, I'm Eugene Meyerson.
All right, take it easy, man. Come on.
All right, is that it?
That's it. I'm gonna play. I'm going to play that voicemail, and then we're going to talk to Brian, Uncle Albert.
Okay, Uncle Albert. All right. Well, I hope he's doing well, and I hope he's staying strong.
I hope you're staying strong.
I am strong like a noodle.
Okay. Well, excellent.
No, I'm doing well. It was fun to be on, and I will say, stay strange, Dopey Nation.
All right. Thank you, Sam.
Is that what I say?
Well, if that's what you want, I don't dislike that. I don't dislike that at all.
Okay, I'm going to go with that. All right.
All right. Thank you, man. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was my friend Sam. Here is a fucking voicemail that I just loved. It's from a guy named Evan in Atlanta. So good.
Hey, what's up, Dopey Nation? This is Evan in Atlanta. I wanted to tell y'all a story about the worst day of my life. February 2014, I was living in a small mountain town in North Carolina. I'd been awake for probably about 3 or 4 days on amphetamines and got in a big fight with my girlfriend. She left, in the evening, and I decided, fuck it. I'm going to eat a 10 strip of this really strong acid that I've been sitting on for a while. So I take the acid and surprisingly have an amazingly profound trip. I figured out the meaning of life. Pretty much all my problems were solved. I wasn't going to have to work another day in my life. I was just going to travel the world and spread this message that I'd received, like kind of like the next prophet. So I was experiencing tons of joy and just tripping balls. Come morning time, I'm still real high, and my roommate's getting up and getting ready for work. Now, he's a pretty angry kind of guy, real negative person, real into guns and violence and stuff of that nature. And I'm hanging out with him, telling him, that I've figured out the meaning of life, whatever. We smoke a bowl. And next thing I know, after smoking, I'm laying on my kitchen floor, and I'm in extreme physical pain, and there's blood gushing out of my face, and he's standing above staring at me. I was too high to know what was really going on. I thought that he'd either shot or stabbed me, and that I had to die in order to let this message of peace and love fill the world. And I'm laying on the floor, like bleeding out of my face, and I'm not dying. I'm trying to allow myself to die. It's not happening. Next thing I know, I feel like I'm burning. Like I feel like my skin's on fire. Somehow I lose my clothes. I go from laying on the ground to being completely naked, trying to escape the house. I'm too high to know how to use a door, so I'm like running into walls with my face, blood everywhere. Finally, I make it outside, and I'm completely naked. It's probably below zero with the wind chill factor. Running down my driveway that's covered in snow, run down the gravel driveway. When I get down to the road below, I trip and eat shit onto the pavement. When I get up, I'm surrounded by like 5 or 6 dudes. These guys were scary as fuck. I thought they were my roommate's friends. It looked like a murder posse, something from like Mad Max. These dudes all look like fucking demons, and I'm like, oh fuck, they've come to finish killing me since my roommate couldn't. So I'm like, I know these guys are gonna fucking kill me, so I'm not gonna go out without a fight. So I'm fighting these guys and just talking mad shit, telling them I fucked their sister, all kinds of bad shit. Finally, they restrain me, put me in handcuffs, and smash my face into a tree. Turns out these guys were cops. My roommate had called my mom and told her that I was out of my mind and that I was running around the house naked, and I had hit my head into a ceramic, one of those clawfoot tubs. So I had a huge laceration in my forehead, and I was gushing blood. And he asked her what to do. She told him to just call the police. So the police came. Meanwhile, I think they're the murder posse. So they finally get me handcuffed, end up breaking my wrist in 4 places doing so, and get me put on a stretcher. I thought that it was like a gurney that they were putting me on and putting me on a cart that was going to hell. It was about a 30-minute ride to the hospital. And I don't know what the fuck's going on. I think I'm basically on the cart to hell. Finally, when I get to the hospital, I have like a moment of clarity. I thought I was going to jail. I could see that there were police on the ambulance, and they must have shot me up with some Thorazine or some kind of sedative, because I had a moment of clarity. And I said, "Oh, am I going to jail?" And they said, "No, we're taking you to the hospital. We're trying to save your life right now." And I said, "Oh shit, I'm real sorry. I'm fucked up. I was doing and saying things that I shouldn't have been, and they were like, relax, just be calm. We're trying to help you. So the total amount of damage that I received that day, I got my wrist was broken in 4 places, had a broken nose, huge gash in my forehead that had to get stitched up. I had 2 black eyes, broken ribs, road rash from head to toe, and frostbite on my feet. Now, my parents came up to North Carolina from Atlanta and first off told the doctors there that I was an opiate addict and not to give me any kind of opiate medication. So I was in the worst physical pain I've ever experienced in my entire life. I was in the hospital for about 3 days with no painkillers. So withdrawing, in addition to just being completely beaten to a pulp. My parents take me back to Atlanta to live with them, while I have to have surgery and, I'm supposed to get healthy and recover. Couldn't stop using, was smoking meth the night before, like major wrist surgery. And that was pretty much the event that kicked off my final run. Shortly after that, my parents kicked me out of their house, for using drugs and stealing. And for about 2 years after that, I was pretty much homeless, living out of my car, extended stays if I was lucky. But just really, in that 2 years was able to get beat up bad enough by drugs and addiction to hit my rock bottom and decide to get sober. And, it took me a couple tries, moved into a halfway house in April of 2016, and I relapsed a couple times, but, got back into it, got a sponsor, started working steps, and by the grace of God, I've been sober now since March 1st to 2017. So I got a little over a year and a half of sobriety, and life is just so much better. My life is just full, and I have great people in my life, and yeah, sobriety is great. And sometimes it takes a lot of pain and crazy shit to get there, but I'm glad I did. And that's the story. I wish the best to all of you, Dopey Nation. Stay strong. Toodles.
Thank you, Evan. Love that voicemail. Fucking such a good story. Tell it so well, and the message of recovery is really good too. Evan ordered a hat a while ago, like a month ago, and I don't think he's still gotten it. And I know a lot of you guys have ordered hats, and I think most of you have gotten the hats and the stickers. If you haven't gotten your hat and your stickers, please message me. And if you want a hat and stickers, I'm doing a new hat, but I'm also doing more copies of the old one. So just send me an email to dopeypodcast@gmail.com. Write me a note on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Do all that stupid social media stuff because it's great. I love the Dopey Nation. Thank you to Andrew, Paulina, for keeping it going. Everybody else, Catherine, all the listeners, fucking my friend in Hawaii, everybody who's listening. It's just the coolest thing to have this community, and I never expected to have a community like this from what me and Chris started doing so long ago, or maybe it wasn't that long ago. But here is another member of the fucking community, motherfucking Brian. I don't know what he wants to be called, but I will find out. Let's see what he wants to be called. Okay, here we go. Let's see, blah, 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 I'm killing time. Let's see if he answers.
Hello?
Yo, Brian.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, you're actually on the show. You made it.
Oh, awesome. I made it, finally. That's awesome.
It's been like fucking at least 3 weeks in a row that I was like, Brian's coming on the show, and then like this and that happens, and it didn't happen. So welcome.
Well, I figured you were probably so busy, like you probably had a bunch of guests like on the spot list, you know?
Yeah, I was just trying to like produce the show. So, like, you know what I mean? Because it couldn't be what it was. So I've been trying to make it different with little bits here and there. And I wanted to give you the proper amount of time. And I don't think that you're necessarily going to get the proper amount of time now, because you need a lot of time. But you're going to get some time. We're going to take the first shot at the story. Can I call you Brian?
Awesome.
Should I call you Uncle Albert? What should I call you?
Yeah, well, that's fine, because, that's what everyone on the Facebook group Dopey Nation knows me as. I've been kind of weird about giving out my last name, because I'm trying to package the stories that I've kind of gathered along my, addiction years. And some of them are, I don't know if I'd want my full identity revealed for them. They're pretty, debaucherous. So, that's been my whole challenge, is that, I've had people come on and record stories, and then I have to, have a criminal, defense degree or something, because I got to find out when statute of limitations are for some of these stories, because, I don't want to get anyone in trouble or anything, So it's just been, this kind of this paranoid thing that we've had. And when we started our podcast, I was on adult drug court, and my counselor, I knew he wanted to listen to our stories because he wanted to, sanction us for, all, it's basically self-admitting to, using drugs. So
now, forgive me, Brian. Brian has a podcast called The Nod Squad, but are there episodes out?
Not all. We have a bunch. And I had a co-host as well, and he had relapsed and got sent to a residential treatment center. So he's doing good now. It's just I kind of was left without a co-host, and I was trying to figure out kind of what to do from there, and then a bunch of insanity kind of happened, and I graduated, and I kind of went out, and I kind of set myself up.
But can anybody hear the Nod Squad? Is it possible to hear the Nod Squad or not yet?
I'm going to have an episode up very soon. And it's going to be up in the form of a YouTube channel. It's not going to be like a podcast. It's going to be a little different format. I wanted it something in something different for the listeners to because I'm sure anyone who would listen to what I'm doing would be also a fan of Dopey. But I wanted it not to be so similar, so I was taking it on as a YouTube channel that was kind of shorter, and just, I don't know, I guess once I get it up, you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. But
Dopey has a very, very, very pathetic YouTube channel as well.
I did not know that. Wait, what?
Have you ever seen Dopey's really pathetic YouTube channel?
No.
That's very sad.
I saw that one video you did where you kind of had kind of narrated your story.
Yeah.
One of your stories.
Yeah.
And what we wanted to also do was we wanted to have people come and tell these stories that we were recording. We wanted to have them animated into cartoons on some kind of medium like YouTube. But then I was researching that too, and there's all these terms and of service, and I'm sure we would break all the rules by having cartoon depictions of people doing heroin and stuff. So, but I just still thought it was such a cool idea, and I'm sure people would get entertainment value out of it. I'm sure we would break every rule and get kicked off immediately.
Dude, the rules are nothing. It's the work. Do you know how long it takes to animate even a 5-minute story? It's forever.
Well, the thing is, I have a friend I met in drug court, and his name is Billy, and he's a good animator. He's just kind of fried on acid, so it's really hard to motivate him to do anything.
Well, you should have him animate the story you're about to tell. You should see if Billy is up for the story.
I wanted to animate that Sizzurp story you had, but you had 3 or 4 of them, so I didn't know which one to work on.
The one, if I was to have, the one, if you animate the story, and the one with Todd is so quick, and it's so funny.
That would be awesome.
He should just do that. It could be 2 minutes. It'd be nothing.
Oh, yeah, that would be so awesome.
But Brian,
that's the problem we had too. Yeah.
Okay. After Chris died, I checked in with you, and you had about a year clean. And so you said, was that true or not true?
And it was kind of a haze, but I do remember being loaded when I was listening to Dopey and got the news that Chris died. which was like even more of like a smack to my face that like what I was doing was so stupid, you
Right.
know? But like I said earlier, I kind of set myself up for failure because, you know, while I was on drug court, you know, I wasn't using drugs, but I had I'd kind of made this like drug collection in my storage unit in a safe. So like, because like I hadn't told my drug court counselors and my own probation officer, I had told them, I was like, I didn't have that many drug connections before I started this program. I barely had any. And now, like, that you put me in this, like, intensive drug program, and that's court ordered, most of these people aren't really serious about recovery. I now can get more drugs than I've ever been able to get before in my entire life.
So while you were in the drug court, you were using, or were you just collecting drugs?
I wasn't using. I was just I was like, you know, Fear and Loathing. Like,
sure.
He says, like, once you have a good drug collection going, it's really hard to stop. That's kind of what happened to me. You know, I wouldn't really do them. I would just, like, you know, every now and then I'd add some, like, you know, I'd get some mushrooms or I'd get some acid too, and like, you know, I got just like all these different drugs. It was horrible.
So at the height, Brian, of your drug collection, what was in it?
Oh my God, dude! I had like almost pretty much every psychedelic you could think of. I had like 2 ounces of mushrooms, but there were like 4 different strains. I didn't even know there was different strains of mushrooms, but apparently they are. And then I had like 50 hits of gel tab acid. I had a gram of DMT. I had Molly. I had some ecstasy pills. It's hard to remember all. There was a lot. And then, you know, I had like, you know, a bunch of different pills, Xanax bars. I had some black tar, some coke, and some crystal meth. And it was funny because like I said, I didn't really. I mean, towards the end, I was kind of dabbling, but I had perfected this like art of being like a weekend warrior, where like I guess towards the end, when there was holidays coming up, like Thanksgiving and stuff, it would lie on like a day that was next to the weekend, and the drug and alcohol building is obviously closed for holidays. So me and my dumbass friends who were in drug club were like, oh, there's not going to be any testing for like 3 solid days in a row, which is like the perfect amount of time to flush your system, you know? So I would, you know, dabble. I would do like maybe a shot of some black tar and some like coke or, you know, some clear, you know, meth. And then I would just do that one shot, and then I would stop, and I would just flush for 3 days. And then I'd be clean. And even if they tested me, you know, on the 4th day, I'd be clean. And it was funny because it was weird because everyone else I knew that did that just could not stop. They couldn't put it down. So, like, everyone went out, including my co-host Ryan. And, yeah, they all got sent to rehab. So then I was kind of like, fuck, all my friends are gone. But then there was a situation where someone, there's a lot of snitches in drug court, right? So I think I'd almost gotten snitched out. Someone told on me. And so I had to, like, I forget what I had to do. I think you get a sanction, which is jail time for no matter what you do. Like if you miss a test, a drug test, or you miss a group or whatever, they'll send you to jail for the weekend, you know?
Right.
So I think they had called me in for a random test, and they knew I was dirty. And so I knew if I just didn't show up for the test, it would be like 2 to 3 days in jail. Whereas if I did show up and get it dirty, it's like maybe a week or more in jail, and you have to fast track back to the beginning of the program. And I was like, fuck that, you know?
So in all that time, in all that drug court time, in all that time where you were like, you were never really sober, you would like use on the weekends, and you never really like pursued recovery. You would like not use for a few days at a time.
Well, I mean, I went like, I think the first 6 months I didn't use. But then I told you, remember when I told that Kratom story on here?
Yeah.
Because I was using Kratom before, because like, for me, like, I was still in this really toxic relationship with this girl. We had this very, like, Sid and Nancy relationship when we were dating, and it was really ugly. And she would, like, use in front of me, and I was trying to stay clean because I didn't want to go to jail. So I was getting, like, constant triggers and cravings because she would just be either high around me or using in front of me. So when the reason I liked Kratom so much was whenever I had, like, a mental craving, I would take some, and it would go away. Like, my craving would literally go away.
Right.
So it helped me stay off of heroin. You know, that's the reason I took it. And then, you know, unlike Suboxone and Methadone, you know, when I would stop taking kratom, I didn't really have this crazy physical withdrawal from not taking it. So that was helping me get by. And then they had started, I guess the counselors had caught on that we were all taking kratom. So then they bought a test for me, and I tested. I was like the first person to test dirty for kratom. I think they spent $125 on one.
But if kratom isn't illegal, then what can they do about you testing dirty for it?
Well, that's the thing is when you take kratom, it doesn't show up as an opiate in the piss test. It's not really the same molecular structure as an opiate is, which is so interesting because it triggers your brain opioid receptors, right?
Right.
But it's not an opiate. I think they said, if you look it up, it says like it's in the same family as like the coffee plant or something.
But the question is though, how could they bust you for being on something that's legal? Like how could they have any leg to stand on with that?
They can piss test you for alcohol there. I guess alcohol stays in your pee for like 72 hours. They test the enzyme that's produced out in your liver when you drink.
So you sign something when you go to drug court saying you're not going to drink and you're not going to take kratom and you're not going to take whatever kava. I guess right. Okay, so it's part of the subculture of drug court, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different. I mean, I'm in California, by the way, if anyone doesn't know, but there's a lot of different drug programs we have, and they're all vary in difficulty. Drug court is like it's like the hardest drug program they have. It's like end of the road. This is your last chance. And you know, most of the people who were in there with me were like people getting sales charges and stuff. So I was around like dealers and stuff too. So I was around like all different types of, you know, drug users, drug dealers, like who were looking at like maybe 3 to 6 years in prison, and this was their last chance, you know. I had on my record like 2 felony intent to distribute charges from when I was working at 2 medical marijuana dispensaries in LA, and this was before like the recreational laws had passed, and it was like, you know, like a gray area, and I had gotten in trouble with that
for weed.
That's a whole different fucking story. Yeah, so yeah, and it was all for weed, but you know, you hear intent to distribute, it's like sounds like you're like a drug dealer like anyone else, but so they kind of taxed that on with it because I had a possession charge for heroin also. So they kind of took the last convictions I had in the last 5 years, and they're called it's like being a floater. It's like floating on your record. If you complete the drug program, they'll remove it from your record. So I was like, well, fuck yeah, that's what I wanted to do, because by then I'd accumulated quite a good amount of drug convictions. So this was like one chance I had to like kind of get felonies off of my record. So I was all about it. But it's not an easy program.
Wait, so drug court takes felonies off your record. That was why you did it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to get specific, I guess for most cases, when you complete it, it'll reduce your felonies to a misdemeanor, and then any misdemeanors will be, you know, expunged. I mean, I have a different special case, but maybe I don't have to get into all that, because I could talk about all this stuff forever. I didn't know if you wanted to talk more about my last overdose.
Yeah, I want to get there. I want to get to the last overdose, because I really think it's. I mean, the only thing is, though, Brian, and just to be totally honest with you, when we were gearing up, you know, before that, you were being dishonest with me on the phone, because you were telling me you had a year clean and this and that.
Well, no, I think when I first talked to you, I probably did, but I still had, you know, a bunch of drugs in my storage unit. I was like, kind of like neglecting stuff, you know, like, I mean, I just didn't know, I didn't even know what I was thinking doing that, like, buying those drugs. But the thing is, when I was in drug court, when I first started drug court, I didn't really take recovery seriously at all. Right. You know? I mean, I was doing it. I knew I could stay clean that long, or at least, you know, if I did it once or twice, like, it's such a small amount. I knew I could get through the program, and even though other people were struggling, I knew I could do it. But like what my plans were when I graduated, I really had none, and I didn't kind of have a foundation of recovery set up for myself for when I exited the program. So it kind of was just like a matter of time before, I had gone out again. But I think what opened my eyes was where that addiction kind of carried me into areas that it never had before, that were kind of, really terrifying, because, I mean, when it comes down to it, I don't want to die,
right.
That's scary. And I'm sure anyone who out there who's been hit with Narcan, it's just a fucking terrifying thing, It's such a strange experience.
So why don't you just give us the story of that final run and what happened at the end of it?
Okay. Well, this is because I've gotten Narcan twice. First time I got Narcan, I think I might have told you about. This was such a long time ago. Christmas. You guys were probably maybe a year and a half, 2 years in with Dopey.
Right.
And I was like 6 months in. I'm not even I'll touch on that later. But yeah, remember I told you I had the Dopey. You had sent me that Dopey hat.
Yeah.
And
You're the only person. You're the only person with a red one besides me. I have a red one at my dad's house.
That's awesome.
Maybe Chris's family has a red one somewhere. Maybe if anybody has a red Dopey hat, let me know. You know what they just made? The guy who makes my hats just made a blue Dopey hat with orange letters, and I'm not sure if I'm going to sell it or not.
Well, orange letters, I don't know about that. You do need to bring back the baseball T-shirts, though.
They're back. The baseball T-shirts are there.
Okay,
yeah.
Oh, then I'm buying some because those were my favorite. But yeah, I have a picture in this hotel in Pasadena, and it's just it's the red Dopey hat, and it's like I have to have like $500-600 worth of different drugs just spread all around it like a dumbass. I was just like thinking that was cool or something, and then I had fallen out then, and I knew for a fact that was fentanyl because I could feel like Jose, my dealer in LA, Jose, he had like black tar, and it was supposed to be China White, but he called it like the magic. But you can just tell the difference between a fentanyl high and like a regular heroin high. But my problem was I was mixing cocaine with it, so like. But anyway, that's a whole different story. This last time, it was even scarier. I had just graduated drug court. And
from what I understand, nowadays they put fentanyl in the coke too. So
I don't know if that's more of an East Coast thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Here on the West Coast, I haven't because I'm back in college, so I deal with a lot of college kids, and I haven't seen that here. I don't even think this last time there was fentanyl in the tar I was doing. I just think my tolerance was so much lower,
right?
Because I was just not using it as much.
All right, get us back there. Get us back there. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Okay, so basically, I'm getting off drug court, and I'm doing good. I'm working. I'm back in college. I'm taking all these audio and video engineering classes, and I've been taking addiction studies classes just to kind of study up on, my disease. What happened was my parents were going on vacation to Washington, D.C. So I was watching their dogs at their house, and I kind of had the whole house to myself. So I was like, oh, cool. And it was only a matter of time. I think I ran into someone who was in not maybe drug court, but a different drug program, or he was at one time, and, I had to exchange numbers with him or something, and turns out he was, like, a pretty big-time dealer. So it was just like, oh, great. It's just like an instant connection back into the drug lifestyle. So, I ended up becoming buddy-buddy with this guy. And I guess I casually mentioned that, my parents are on vacation, and he comes and hangs out for one night. And then, he's like kind of smokes a lot of meth. And so a night quickly turned into like, a couple more days and then a week. And then it turns out, towards the end, he was just like crashing out in our guest bedroom, just like feeding me dope and meth. I was doing like goofballs. And,
right.
I don't know about anyone else there, but I'm a heroin addict. So, I had just started to like kind of get into like speedballs and goofballs towards the end.
Right.
But when it came to shooting meth, I was such a lightweight.
Yeah.
Like, so I had to be really careful with how I dosed, like how much I put in and cooked, because if I did too much, it'd get really bad. Like I would just get nauseous, or It would just not be fun.
Yeah, it would ruin the dope too. I mean, I found that when I was using meth in California with Todd, I would always have a ton of dope. So, and I always wanted to see what I always thought it was a speedball, but apparently it was a goofball, and I always wanted to see what it was like. So I would always do I started doing half and half, and I was like, I can't even feel the dope.
Too much.
So then I cut it down to like 1 to 5 or 1 to 4, and I was like, that's the mix I liked. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Because when you get the mixture right, it is nice, but it's you have to get it just right, you know. So, and I was still like experimenting with that, and but at the same time, it was really hard for me to sleep, like, because I'm a lightweight, so I'm like having trouble sleeping, and so that's when it was like I kind of started getting paranoia sets in after a while. But then I also started to look at my buddy who's like, you know, the dealer, and he's just as high on meth, but he's smoking it, and you know, it's like kind of a weird kind of uncomfortable feeling when your heroin dealer is like just crashing at your house and smoking meth, being up for days with that weird like kind of Charles Manson look in his eyes, and you know, he's carrying a gun, and you know, he's just like he's got really weird really fast.
And you're at your parents' house. It's every kind of wrong at once. It's like it's like contaminating your parents' house. Yeah,
I know. And it was like, this is like a suburban neighborhood, and this is like, you know, homeowners association. Like, this is like not the place you would think something like this was going down. So it got dark really fast, and I ended up quitting my job. I just couldn't take it anymore. And I mean, I was high at work, but I was getting a lot of work done. But I was just sick of my boss. He would get drunk every night and talk shit. You know, I was working at an Italian restaurant, and the guy who was like the chef and the owner, he was like this 80-year-old full-blooded Italian dude who would just get drunk every night and talk shit and yell at everyone. And you know, I may have been able to put up with that like sober, but when I was high, I was like, I do not give a fuck. And I was at the same time, I was like, dude, I'm staying at my parents' house right now. Like, fuck it. So I was like, just left, and then I just kind of hung out with my fucking dealer, and we just fucking got loaded like for the rest of the week. And then it got really blurry really fast, you know?
Yeah.
Like, everything kind of just blurred together after like 3 days of being up all night, you know? It's just really hard to like keep track of what happened where. But I remember it was towards the end of the week, and they were coming back into town, and this is what is weird about this overdose, and this is what everyone else I've explained this to, they're like, that's weird, that doesn't make sense. Usually when people fall out, it's right after they do a shot. Like, they do the shot, they pull the needle out, and then they fall out, you know? This last time I fell out, I don't remember, like, I'm almost 100% positive. I did my shot, took it out, you know, rinsed out my rig, and then I spent like an hour or so like cleaning up my house, because I was convinced that I had to clean the whole house, and that would be like, okay, they're not going to suspect anything or trip out. But then I'd fallen out like an hour after I did the shot, which I have no explanation for. You know, like really why weird. That would happen. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that before, because like the first time I had gotten Narcan, I remember I did the shot, closed my eyes, and when I woke up, I was in the back of a paramedics unit.
Chris would have a reason. Chris would have some reason why that is. It's some long acting chemical or some weird half-life thing with the opioid that you had or something.
My theory was that I was poking so many holes into my veins that maybe like
you missed
some of the dope was like maybe I missed some of it, and it was like just hanging around in my arm, and then somehow it, like, I don't know, like.
But that's really just some fucking junky logic, to be honest with you. I used to think stuff like that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just a weird thing. Like, you would think I would remember doing the shot and then falling out, but the last thing I remember was like folding clothes and like running around all frantic, like delusional and manic, like, you know, too high on meth, and then it like all went to dark. Everything went black, like it does when you fall out. And when I opened my eyes again, I was almost like blind. It was almost like I was fucking blind. I could only see, I had like tunnel vision. I could only see like a little bit in front of me, and I was hearing people talk who I didn't recognize. Apparently, what had happened was, you know, my dealer was up in the guest bedroom, you know, doing God knows what, tweaking out on one of his drones or whatever. But he had told me, he was like, it was really eerily quiet downstairs where I was, because I usually blast music. So he goes downstairs to check on me, and I'm just laying on the ground, like dead, like foaming at the mouth.
Right.
And my
totally overdose.
Oh, totally. And my dealer friend's freaking out. Thank God he has a friend, a mutual friend, who is also a junkie, but he always has got naloxone on him. And he's like supposedly like the biggest pro at giving people naloxone or Narcan. And he lived right down the street. So he kind of called our mutual friend. I mean, he knew him better than me, but he called him or he texted him. He said, he's dead. And he was like, and he gave him the address, and the dude came right over here. And with his girlfriend, and apparently they had to hit me 4 times in a row with naloxone to get me to come out of it, which from what I've heard is like most people, or not pretty much, everyone I tell that to is like, I've never heard of anyone having to get hit that many times. Maybe 3 times, yeah. Never heard of anyone having to get hit 4 times.
Crazy. And how did you feel? What did it feel like when you came out of it?
Oh, it's horrible. Like the first time I had gotten Narcan, I didn't really feel a withdrawal, but this time I definitely felt a withdrawal. It felt horrible.
Well, you had 4
but
shots. That's got to be like fucking dramatic.
Well, it was so confusing, and then once I had realized I had fallen out, I was just so grateful. Like, I was so thankful, but I was like, it was still weird because I could barely see in front of my face. Like, I could only see certain things, and the dude's girlfriend was, like, kind of calming me. I guess when they had gotten me out, when I came out of it, I came out screaming. Like, on the 4th day of naloxone, I came out, and I was just screaming instantly. So that freaked him out, and then my dog started barking like crazy, so they were freaking out about that. But, I mean, they were freaking out because they thought I was dead. And before that, before they had hit me with Narcan, they tried to hold my body under the shower and, like, pour water over me. So when I came out of it, I was soaking wet, and I'm like, why am I soaking wet? Like, so confused, And I was instant withdrawal, so I'm freezing. And they ended up having, like, a dab rig, and they dabbed me out to smoke some tar to get me out of the withdrawal,
Right.
Thank God, they're so nice. And so, yeah. I was just like, wow, dude, this and I was so grateful. And I guess.
Hold on, but does the tar hit you when you're on the Narcan?
Well, I mean, it brought me out of the withdrawal after I came out of it.
Shouldn't it be blocking you? I guess you overrode it.
Well, that's the thing is, I don't know. This guy knows everything about, like, getting hit with Narcan, so he knew exactly how to do it. And I'm almost more thankful that he had called my friend instead of an ambulance or a paramedics or whatever, because I almost think that if they had called the paramedics, well, first of all, my neighbors would have saw, and then they would have, as soon as my parents got home from vacation, my neighbors would have been like, oh, there was a paramedics over at your house, and I would have raised an alarm, red flag with them. But then also, I don't think that paramedic would have hit me more than 3 times with Narcan. They probably would have given up at 3. They probably assumed I was dead.
No, I'm sure they have some sort of protocol to not let the junkie overdose. I'm sure they'll keep hitting you.
I don't know.
It's like 3 is not enough. Let's let him die. And the guy's like, shouldn't we give him a 4th one? And he's like, no, that's totally against Narcan protocol.
Well, I don't know. I didn't know if usually people are dead by it. It's just a waste of their Narcan. I don't know. But anyway, so I can't even move my arms and legs at the beginning. I'm just like a paralyzed, like my senses and everything are all shot, but I can talk really clearly.
Right.
So I'm like, they're talking me through it, and like finally they smoke me out with enough tar that I can like get off the ground and calm my dogs down. And apparently,
so is that what they're doing now? They dab the tar. They're like hitting it with how does that work?
Well, you know how people dab wax, like that new kind of concentrated weed.
Yeah.
It's like that, but you just instead of using that new weed wax, it's black tar, and apparently it's safer because it's not as easy to overdose on. I think. And
you don't lose as much smoke as you did off foil and shit like that.
I'm sure you don't lose as much smoke because foil was like back in the day. That's like horrible.
So stupid. So stupid.
Yeah. That's like barbaric by today's standards technology.
Yeah. I'm so old. But anyway, it's funny. Anyway,
I know. Like, isn't that weird? Like in my day, we had foil and like we had to get 2 sticks together. Like
exactly.
No.
Exactly.
So basically, another funny thing is, these guys are really nice and they're really caring and saved me from coming out of Narcan, but they're also junkies. So for some reason they had gone through my wallet. I get later, I guess their excuse was they wanted to know my name. So they looked through my wallet to see my ID, but I'm like, you can just ask my friend right here and he'll tell you my name. But I guess I had said something because I was in such shock. I was like, oh my God, my life is so priceless. Like I couldn't put a value on my life. And they're like, oh, well, you have $100 in your wallet right here. And I guess I just said, yeah, take it. Take my $100, whatever. I don't
so
really
you
care
gave them the
point.
$100 at the end of the whole thing?
I was so out of it. I gave them $100, the last $100 in my wallet.
You tipped the Narcan administrators. You're like, good job, boys. Here's 100.
I didn't even realize. And then the next day, because I had been up for days, so I was probably delusional. And then the next day, I was wondering where my $100 went. But honestly, my parents have a lot of nice stuff at their house, so I'd almost rather them take my $100 than something nice that my parents own.
Totally.
So
totally.
It is what it is.
Let me ask you this. What happened to your drug collection?
I kind of, I go to college, I kind of just had people take care of that, and get my money back because I just didn't want to deal with it. Not that I'd be triggered, because psychedelics don't really trigger me like heroin would.
No, but you still have. Do you still have a safe full of drugs?
At the time, yeah, I did. But see, I kept them in my storage unit, so they were not in my house with me where I can be tempted to do them.
So you still have them?
No, not anymore.
What did you do with them?
At the time, I had friends who I know in college get rid of them and give me money for them.
They bought them, they sold them, whatever.
Yeah. It was mainly at that point. It was mainly a bunch of just psychedelics, and all these kids at college want psychedelics, so
right.
It was not hard to get my money back.
So when you came out of this whole thing, when you came out of this Narcan, fucking dabbing tar, all this shit, did you go straight for a recovery, or was there a minute of not knowing how to live in this post opiate minute?
I'm really good at weaning myself off of heroin. I've done it a bunch of times, so I have kind of this perfect little regimen of things I would take to get myself off of heroin.
You have a well-designed wean?
Yeah, I'm actually going to make a video about it because, a lot of people ask how can they get off of heroin. And
let's hear it. Let's hear it real quick. All right,
I'll do it real quick. Okay, well, what I had done, every time I'm deciding to use heroin, I always invest a percentage of any of my money into what I call a safety net, which consists of a lot of different things. And this is just in case, I run out of money and I can't support my habit anymore, that I don't go into really horrible withdrawal. So what happens is, there's a million different ways you can customize this plan, but for me, at least this time, I had, I think the next day, I slept it off. The next day I was out of heroin, but I had a bunch of cotton saved up, so I kind of tapered down my tolerance
right.
by doing cottons that day, which it kept me from getting too bad. And then the day after, I had Suboxone. I had 3 Suboxone strips.
Right.
And my recommendation is to at least find some Methadone or Suboxone, but you have to have a very strict rule that you do only take Suboxone or Methadone for 3 or 4 days, and not any longer than that.
Right.
Because, obviously the half-life on them is so much stronger, you can go into even worse withdrawal on those than...
But the thing is, most people, me included, every time... I always had Methadone on hand, and in the end, I'd have Suboxone on hand, and I'd have pills on hand. But for somebody like me, all it became was a bridge to the next time I had enough money to get dope. There was no way it was going to become a successful wean. I was not somebody... I was incapable of having a successful wean. I was literally incapable of it.
Getting clean is one thing, and staying clean is an entire other thing, right? And back before, I didn't really think of myself as having a problem because I was able to wean myself off so
No,
much.
but fuck
But it was
staying clean and getting clean. I'm saying I could never go from dope habit to not using. You know, I just couldn't get there without getting away. I had to go away.
Well, this last relapse or this last overdose, it scared me so much that I was just like scared straight. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was like, I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. And you know, I know that if I ever did die like that, it would be so devastating to my mother. It would it would affect her health so much, it would kill her.
Right.
You know? So I was, and not only that, it's just like, I kind of had this epiphany where it's like, I have so much to live for, and I have all these different, really cool, creative projects I want to at least try and put out there for people to, you know, get some sort of enjoyment out of before I do run out of time on this planet.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can't risk that. I was like, I just don't, it's too early for me. And I'm too terrified to leave just yet, you know? So, you know, yeah, getting off this time was a lot more, I had a lot more motivation behind me. But yeah, I had 3 Suboxone strips, 8 milligram strips. And the day after I ran out of cottons, I took 1 full 8 milligram strip. You know, then day 2, I took a half strip. And then day 3 and 4, I took a quarter of a strip. So technically, I had only taken 2 Suboxones.
Right.
But I knew after day 4, I was like, I'm not going to take any more Suboxone because I want to. I'm just going to withdraw off Suboxone. So then I had switched from Suboxone to Kratom. And then I would take, it was like 3 teaspoons of Kratom mixed with orange juice because it's so bitter. It tastes awful.
You're like a man falling to earth, trying to slow the fall. Like a feather going from one side to the other. I understand.
And it helps so much. It helps so because, see, Kratom, it does help a little with physical withdrawal, but it doesn't help as nearly as much as, like, Suboxone or Methadone. It's just, you know, after a while of Suboxone or Methadone, then that's going to feel shitty, too. So I knew if I switched to Kratom, it would, like, lessen the blow of everything. So then I took Kratom for, like, a week. And I would take, you know, we have the recreational law for weed passed here. So, you know, there's stores, legal stores here now. And I got one of those, it was like a dab pen cartridge where it's like the hash oil in a little cartridge and you screw it into a battery.
Yeah.
And so I took that too. And then I think I had a couple of Xanax or Valiums to help me sleep at night if I couldn't sleep. But, you know, even after like the main withdrawal was gone, it was difficult because, you know, I had a lot of friends who I needed to remove from my life. That's the biggest thing I think people need to realize is when they get clean is that they have to remove people from their life or else they're always going to have that temptation to use.
Right.
Or that you know, and it's just like the thing that opened up my eyes this time was how quickly things went downhill. It was just like so fast this time.
Yeah.
Like, and I guess time is so warped and time goes by so fast when you're like on like, you know, those kinds of drugs, especially like meth, you know. So it was just like, yeah, it was just so weird and scary, like how easily things could get out of control real fast.
Well, you're very, very fortunate. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I mean, and most
people,
but most people, in my experience, can't do the wean. They could tell the story of the wean, but I mean, like me included, I never could do it. And most people don't ever make it to, like, so what are you taking now?
What am I taking now? I mean, I took a couple of gabapen like a week ago because I was prescribed it, but I don't even really take those anymore. So, I kind of sold all my gabapen too. Like,
so you're off everything?
I vape nicotine. I drink lots of coffee. Oh, ice cream. I've been eating shit tons of ice cream and pouring coffee on ice cream.
Oh yeah, that's the best. I highly recommend that. It's amazing.
Like after the physical withdrawal was gone and the mental cravings were there, I would go to like the food for less down the street from my house, and I just get the biggest fucking tub of ice cream, and I would just pour. Yeah, it was like a root beer float, but it was like coffee instead of ice cream.
Oh, and that hot,
so
the hot
good.
Coffee and the cold ice cream.
God.
Yes, I agree.
And I would just
And you're going to meetings?
Yeah, I've actually been going to meetings again. Like, you know, a lot of my friends who were in drug court that found out like instantly somehow and were very supportive, which was nice because, you know, I was glad to know that people cared that, you know, I almost died. And I kind of just had to slowly, like, be very picky and choosy of who I wanted to let into my life. You know, I'd be very selective of the kind of people I wanted in my life.
Right.
You know, I have so many different stories with my ex-girlfriend. You know, she, like, and anyone who's heard or will hear these podcasts, I have so many crazy stories dating crazy-ass girls and just going on these crazy sprees that I kind of had to reevaluate what it was about myself that was attracting all these psychotic women. And I finally have met, like, a nice girl who's, like, got 2 years clean, and she's, like, running a sober living house, and she's got her shit together. And so I think that's helped me, like, have, like, just people in my life to surround myself with that are, like encouraging me to stay clean. Because the thing about getting clean is, like, if the person doesn't want to get clean, they're not going to get you. You could do whatever you want. You could try as hard as you want. They're not going to get fucking clean.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Which is what I tried with my ex-girlfriend before. I would try to get her clean all the time, and it just, like, wasn't working. You know? And I was like realizing, like, I can only show you the path, but, like, you have to walk down that path.
You can't get anybody clean. All you can do is, like, listen, it's a miracle. It's a miracle.
You can point them in the general direction, you know.
You can do that, but it's a miracle that you're alive, and it's a miracle that you're positive, and it's like you hit the nail on the head that, like, you're alive because you have things you want to do. You have goals in your life beyond being as high as you can be, because we both know that you're never going to get higher than you were. It's just not going to happen. There is no.
If I do, I'll be dead.
Yeah, well, that's not high. You know what I mean? Like, you'll fucking die before you experience the shit you experienced before again. It's not going to come back.
And and like, I try not to think about it too much because I get too caught in my own head about it. But like how I was so reckless, like how I'm alive and how other people like Chris are gone today. It's like you really have no way of telling if that's going to be the one that takes you out.
Well,
you know? And it can happen so fast. It's so scary. Like, and the thing is, a lot of people are like, "Oh, you shouldn't have gone so hard. You shouldn't have." I was doing really light shots. Like, everything I cooked, I would piggyback whatever I cooked into a second rig, so I'd only do half of what I cooked.
Right.
I was really trying to do everything I could to, like,
not fall out,
be safe.
Yeah.
And so, but I think after a while, I was just so out of it from lack of sleep and lack of whatever. I probably wasn't even keeping track. I mean, who knows? Like, I was, you know, like, I'm sure I was hearing voices here and there, and, like, I didn't see any shadow people. But it was weird. It was so weird. It was,
I know that Chris was as reckless as anybody. I know that Todd wasn't. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Todd, like, sniffed a bag and fucking overdosed and died. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's how he died.
Well, you guys were on the East Coast, too, though. Yeah. So I would imagine, like, the East Coast is more powder dope, and that's way more susceptible to have fentanyl in it, right?
Yeah.
Than tar.
Yeah.
Because the only powder I came across over here, it definitely had fentanyl in it, and that, I don't know how I didn't overdose on those, like, times, too. Like, there was times where, you know, years before that, when I was just active in my addiction, I would do a shot of they called it the magic, and I would be in my room with the doors locked by myself, and I'd fall asleep, and I'd wake up a few hours later, like, that could have killed me, and no one would have known. Like, I had a lot of close calls where it's like, I don't know how the fuck I'm alive today. And, you know, you have to also understand is a lot of people don't know this is, you know, I'm 34 now, but when I was 24 and I had just moved back to LA, and I was going to school for, like, sound engineering stuff, I had been diagnosed with testicular cancer at 24. So, you know, surviving that and then the traumas of that, like, I kind of at the back, and during that time I was, like, thinking I was going to die anyway, so I might as well just party and do whatever the fuck I want.
Right.
And then that's a whole nother, you know, I have too many fucking stories, I swear to God, Dave.
Well, you should get the Nod Squad out. We'll get you back on Dopey.
I can't wait.
I love everything that you say about the Dopey Nation as this amazing group of people, because they really are.
I really wanted to thank everybody out there listening who reached out to me, because that was just the story of my relapse. But then even after that, my ex-girlfriend had finally gotten out of prison. She's in Ohio, and she's gotten released from prison that's a whole other story. But she'd walked in on her prison girlfriend she started dating when they got out. She walked in on her, and she was just dead, like dead. And and then she's all fucked off, and they fucked up over it, and like I've been keeping in contact with you and kind of giving you like tidbits of information here and there. But just like the main thing I want to say is like I was just really emotional when I made that post about that overdose, because there's been so many people dying left and right, apparently, and so it's just been hard. And so I was so surprised that so many people in the Dopey Nation, especially on the Facebook group, they were reaching out and checking in on me and like interacting with me, when it was like I didn't think they would know me well enough, or think they knew me well enough to like be willing to like be part, like to help me like that. So I just wanted to thank everyone out there listening. That was so awesome of you guys to do, and you guys really made me feel accepted and wanted and part of like I think the Dopey Nation is the best type of recovery support group you can have.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing because they're non-judgmental. They've been there, and like somehow I think from the trauma of Chris dying, it like created some gravitational pull that pulled all the listeners back in, and it's very beautiful to see. And I'm very grateful to everybody who loves the show, and I'm grateful that you guys care about each other. I think I've always liked you, Brian. You've been around since the beginning, and we've always kind of kept in touch. And I loved the concept of the Nod Squad and animated shit. And I love the name. But like when I heard about what was going on with you, I just needed to check in because you're my friend, and because like that's what we're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Like I know you do the same thing for me, and like and it also keeps me clean. You know what I mean? Being able to lend a hand keeps me from fucking up.
And that's what's been great, is that now I've been put in situations where people have been asking me for help locally, who have been having trouble, and they've been expressing to me how much I've helped them, when I felt kind of like, really, all right, I'm glad I can help people. Like if anyone could take my words and use that as encouragement to better their lives, that makes me feel great. Like, I mean, I was such a fuck up for so many years. It feels so good to finally like kind of get on this right path, and to see where Dopey has come from, and from its humble beginnings to now it's like gained up so much momentum. It's just like creating like this kind of force by itself without like any kind of effort, is a great thing, and I only see it getting bigger from here.
Well, we'll see what happens. But we're at an hour and 58 minutes, and I swore to myself that I would never do over 2 hours. So let's close it out. You say, leave a review, fucking follow us on Instagram, do all that shit, write us on Reddit, check out Brian's stuff. The Nod Squad will be out. We'll totally promote it. And stay strong, Dopey Nation. And Brian, thank you for calling in.
Well, thanks for having me. If you ever want to have me on and talk about anything else, I'd love to. I'm always here for the Dopey Nation.
We will definitely have you back, and we say toodles for Chris because he's gone, and we love him, and we miss him. And you can say whatever you want. You want to say goodbye?
All right, you guys. Toodles and peace, love, and all the above.
All right, there it is. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Take care. Oh, dude, I'm going to play some weird version of Good So Bad that I recorded when I was young. Do you think I should play a weird version of Good So Bad, or should I play the normal version?
No, play the weird one, because I'm a weirdo.
All right, I'll play the weird one. This is from, like, a long time ago in California. All right, stay strong, everybody. Awesome. Take care. Thank you, Brian.
Take care.
Keep in touch.
Thank you, guys.
Later.
See ya.
Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk And I want to see a Lear jetliner take a dive just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. But I want to be so good, so bad. I want to be good, so bad, so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. My shadow